Well, many thanks indeed for staying with us. We are 30 minutes into the show. This is Business Nigeria now. While global food prices dipped for the fourth consecutive month in July 2022, food inflation has continued to accelerate in Africa's biggest economy for the fifth straight month. According to the July inflation reports published by the MBS, food inflation rose by 22.02% in July, month on month, up 2.04% from 20.6% in June, the highest in 14 months. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia in late February this year has also continued to worsen the outlook of already inflated global food prices, as the war has also disrupted the food supply chain, shooting up the prices of food across the globe. Meanwhile, the unrelenting rise in prices of food staples keeps pushing many households below the poverty line, as major consumer staples showed significant increases year on year and monthly, with no sign of abating. And to give us more insights and perspective to this development, as we try to see how we can chart the ways forward concerning issues around food supply and inflation, is Dr. Ojo. Dr. Matthew Ojo, he's a researcher and agribusiness economist. He joins us live from the United Kingdom. Doctor, such a delight to speak with you here on Business Nigeria. So let's get things started from the global perspective, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine has increased prices of virtually everything from energy to wheat. And the war has, of course, also added to the pressures affecting major economies all around the world. I wonder how you're receiving this news in the UK, where you are.
Well, thank you for having me on your show once again, and good afternoon to our viewers at home. Well, I think it's important to note that inflation has been rising globally, and since we're part of the global economy, it is expected to also have an impact on Nigeria. I think some few months back, Global Data, a renowned leading data analytics company, did forecast that global inflation will rise up to 7.5 by the end of 2022. And since then, they also did mention that this will be driven likely by food, just as you read in your report, fuel, energy, as well as disruptions in the global supply chains. So if you look at what has been happening globally, you also see that even major economies are not left out in this increase or rise in prices. For example, in the UK here, the inflation figures for the month of July show that prices increased by 10.1%, and that is the highest, that we've had since 1982. It has around 40 years. If you look at the food component of it for UK, or food prices, food inflation, it increased to 12.6%. Now, if you also compare that with what is happening in the US, inflation figures for July was 8.5%, and their food component of that rose to 10.9%, and that is also the highest they've had since 1979. Come down to Africa, we had the report or the figures for South Africa for last month, or for July, was 7.8. That's the inflation, but the food inflation for South Africa was 9.7. That was the highest they've had since 2017. So you could see how prices are increasing or changing, and especially as it concerns food. This whole rise in food prices, you could say, was first started by the global pandemic, but then has been made worse, also, as you read in your report, by the Russia-Ukraine war. So globally, countries are experiencing increase in the food prices compared to what it was last year. So if you now juxtapose what is happening globally, what is happening in Nigeria, you could see from what you also read out that the food inflation in Nigeria increased to 22% for the month of July. Now, ordinarily, that wouldn't be a major concern for us. But why is it a challenge for Nigeria? Is because you have external factors like all that is happening outside the country impacting on food prices, but you also have local factors that are contributory to what we are seeing in Nigeria. Then you have insecurity, you have fuel prices, and then you have all the other factors that will not make the ordinary citizen to be able to easily access food for what they have. It becomes very dangerous when you look at the proportion of household income in Nigeria that is spent on food. I did all that analysis the last time I was on your program. So you see, the challenge with us in Nigeria is not just the changes we are seeing globally, it's also what we have internally that is affecting food prices. A few days ago, I was reading a report by an official of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria from Zamfara State, and he was describing the commodity market in Zamfara. According to him, the commodity market in Zamfara is worth around 50 billion naira, and that entire market has been disrupted because of insecurity, banditry, and all the likes.
Yes.
So that is where it becomes very precarious for a country like ours.
Yes. Dr. Joe, I mean, we will come and we'll discuss these issues and what exactly it portends for us here in the country and the continent. But I want us to stay perhaps just a moment with the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I understand that, of course, earlier this month, there was a historic landmark agreement between the two warring nations, Russia and Ukraine, where 1 million tons of grains and food items were exported under that particular landmark deal. It's been 1 month already. Perhaps, are we beginning to feel the impact in any way?
Yes, that was a very welcome development that happened, I think, on the 27th of July. And that made the whole world to heave a sigh of relief, because the war has disrupted supply chains. Because if you look at what is coming out from that area, Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine, for example, exports wheat massively to other parts of the world. And so that Black Sea Agreement, as you might want to call it, or resumption of shipment in the Black Sea region, has helped in ensuring that that constraint in global supply chain, as it concerns food and fertilizer, has been reduced over time. And you could also see from the report, the World Food Price Index, although there has been dipped in the past 4 months, like you reported, but it's expected that with this shipment coming out of Ukraine and also Russia, that will further beat down the global prices for grains. Now, if you come down to Nigeria to say how that will impact us, for me is concerning. One, because in as much as there's been resumption in shipment of grains from these two major economies, when it comes to Nigeria, you have to first battle the issue of exchange rate. That's one. And then if you are able to surmount that, it becomes difficult for most of these importers to be able to have access even to foreign currency. Dollar is not available. And when they do get it, they get it at a very high exchange rate. When you now end up shipping or bringing some of these grains, especially wheat, into the country, the prices will still be high. And you know that wheat is used for that's the third most consumed grain in Nigeria. And you look at all these derivatives and how households depend on derivatives gotten from wheat in Nigeria is huge. So having said that, it's also the level of greed in Nigeria, where once prices of commodity goes up, it hardly comes down, no matter what is happening in the global economy. Now, you can see that in the example of fuel prices. Once there's a problem and it goes up, well, the marketers are quick to add prices to it. But when the whole situation dies down, it becomes difficult for that same price that they were quick to add up to come down. So you can see changes in Nigeria, in outside the country, that is expected to bring down the prices of food or grains in particular. But whether or not that will translate to the same thing in Nigeria, it becomes difficult because of the dynamics that plays out in a country like ours.
Yeah.
So I will not be too have my hands up in the air because of the resumption in the shipment in the Black Sea region. But I would rather look at what we need to do to take care of these dynamics that keeps on making it difficult for prices generally, once they go up in Nigeria, to come down. And that also affects food prices as well.
Yes, and so one of such factors or contributors is the issue of insecurity, which you were going to mention, especially just a moment ago, the decline in food production and scarcity. I'm wondering just how much damage has insecurity done in that regard in the northeast, northwest, north central as well. How has that contributed to Nigeria's shrinking capacity to produce some food products?
Of course, it's expected that what is happening in Nigeria in terms of insecurity will affect food production. It's just worrisome that at times you see government officials come on air and they tell us that food production in Nigeria is increasing, whereas what is on ground, the reality is on ground shows that what they are saying is not correct. And I was just giving an example of comments by an official of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria in Zamfara, where he was vividly describing how insecurity has affected the commodity market in Zamfara. Now, if you look at the figures rolled out by the NBS, and they were looking at food items that contributed to the increase in food inflation, you will see the mentioned there is you have bread, you have cereals, you have potatoes, you have yams and other tubers, and then you have meat, fish, and oils. But the region that is mostly affected, but that's where we get most of our grains from, and also the middle belt where we get most of our tubers from. So it's a simple analogy. You don't need rocket science to know that these activities are actually impacting negatively when it comes to the supply chain for food in Nigeria, because farmers can access their farms, and if they can't access their farms, they won't be able to produce. And instances where they are able to access their farms, they have to pay some of these terrorists or bandits to be able to access their farms. And whether you like it or not, all this will impact on food prices. So where you have demand more than supply, you have what we normally call demand pull inflation, and that affects the prices farmers eventually put on their produce if eventually they're able to get to producing on their farms. Where you also have some of these inflation and the prices increasing is where external forces add up to the cost of production, and there you have what we call the cost push. However, what we are seeing in Nigeria is such that if we don't do something urgently to address the current insecurity situation, you find that the poverty level in Nigeria is going to increase because people can afford the ordinary things they were able to afford before.
All right.
Now, what the report or the figures we've been working on before now is.
Well, Doctor, just a moment. My apologies for interrupting you because I understand that we're running seriously out of time and I have to squeeze in as many questions as possible. Let me take you up on something. To cushion the effects of the rising prices of commodities early this year, somewhere in April, during the Easter and Ramadan period, President Muhammadu Buhari had released or ordered the release of about 40,000 tons of grains. But the impact, I wonder, wasn't really felt by many Nigerians. I know that during the COVID era as well, about 70,000 tons of grains, millets, maize, and all of that was also released into the system. But the impact, most times, have not really been felt by households and Nigerians, perhaps. I wonder what you think could be contributing to this.
Well, even you are struggling to assess what that impact will be, because what is 40,000 metric tons when you look at the population of Nigeria,
the country
around
as well.
200 million people. Okay, so the issue is it's a good development that they released grains, but it's just like a drop in the ocean when you compare what the situation is like in Nigeria. Okay, look at the population. And then there have been concerns raised about the depleting, strategic foreign reserves that we have in Nigeria. Okay, as far as I know, I'm not sure if that has changed. We only have these strategic reserves in 23 locations in Nigeria. We have 36 states. Do we have each state, making provision for such? I don't think so. And if you combine the combined capacity, as at what I know, as at 2017, for our strategic grain reserve is around 1 million metric tons, whereas what is the minimum requirement from United Nations says we should have around 3.5 million metric tons. So it's good that we have something to release. But my concern is that in the nearest future, there might be nothing actually to release because nothing is being produced. And if you are not able to restock or to replenish the grain reserves that we have, what do you want to release to the population? Your alternative will be to be importing grains and be putting in those reserves, and it's going to be very costly for the government to do. So we just need to look at that. We only have, I heard the minister saying that there shouldn't be fears about depletion, that they've restocked up to 90,000 or whatever metric tons for the foreign reserve that we have, grain reserve that we have. The question is, how far can that go? How many months can that, sustain Nigerians? And the other issue is this: when these grains are released, you have so many bureaucracies surrounding it. The question is, do they really get to those who need them? And if it gets to those who need them, at what cost? Don't you have people politicizing this whole thing? So, there are so many things you look at in Nigeria that troubles one. You hear it in the news, they've released it. But what actually gets to those who are most in need of that is another question to be answered because we know what it's like in the country.
All right. Well, Dr. Matthew Ojo, thank you so much indeed for your time and very fascinating insights. We hope that things will get better. We'll keep our fingers crossed and see how the agricultural sector can indeed improve production and see how it can contribute to Nigeria's gross domestic products. Dr. Matthew Ojo, research and agri-business economist, thank you so much for speaking with us from the United Kingdom.
Thank you for having me.